Hey, welcome back to the Squirrel Report. We had a bye in Week 7 like a bunch of NFL teams, and now we are back to get you ready for Week 8. Today we're talking starts and sits. We're going to do a deep dive into the Squirrel Report hotline, taking a bunch of your questions, and we're going to close this up with a new segment we're going to call Nut Up or Shut Up. Let's get to it.
Who's that squirrel? He's Daniel Duck.
All right, we're talking starts and sits here for Week 8, getting you ready for who you need to be playing in fantasy this week. All right, here's a crazy stat. Through 7 weeks of the season, Amari Cooper is wide receiver 42 on a per-game basis. I don't get it. I thought he was their top target. How on earth is he seeing 7.8 targets per game, but only averaging 4 catches per game? That is an abysmal catch rate. And this is not on Amari Cooper. His quarterbacks are just not helping him out at all. PJ Walker and Deshaun Watson are quarterbacks 1 and 3 in off-target rate so far this year. Over the last 3 games, he's had a combined 7 catches. And as we tape this, we're not sure if Deshaun is even gonna play. And even if he does, what the heck is he gonna look like? So in Week 8, through no fault of Amari Cooper and with 0 teams on a bye, Cooper checks in as wide receiver 39. He should be on your bench this week. 2 weeks ago on this very program, I told you to sit DeAndre Hopkins in a game against the Baltimore Ravens. He was outside my top 30, and he finished with 1 catch for 30 yards. I guess I wasn't low enough. And now, after that awful performance in Week 6 and a Week 7 bye, we find out that Ryan Tannehill probably isn't even going to suit up for this Week 8 matchup. Coach Mike Vrabel said we could see both Malik Willis and Will Levis. Now, hold on just a minute. I didn't think you were allowed to start 2 quarterbacks. Well, unless you're the Saints with Taysom Hill, but they've been caught cheating for years now, so that's no surprise. But with no Ryan Tannehill, replaced by a quarterback by committee, in a matchup against the good Falcons secondary, and only 1 finish as a top 25 wide receiver this year, I am firmly out on DeAndre Hopkins. He is a sit for me in Week 8. I was wrong on which Jaguars wide receiver was gonna be the guy. I thought it was gonna be Calvin Ridley. And I was not alone. I know a lot of us thought that way, but I'm only responsible for me. Turns out it was Christian Kirk. So far this year on a per-game basis, Kirk is top 20 in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Over the last 3 weeks, Christian Kirk is wide receiver 15. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 43. In fact, over that time, Christian Kirk is wide receiver 2 in fantasy points via the slot. And the Steelers are allowing the 8th most yards via the slot this year. So yeah, good matchup. And think about that, right? Part of that is because of TJ Watt. He gets into quarterbacks' pockets in a hurry. Dude's got 8 sacks, which is 2nd most in the NFL. So quarterbacks got to get the ball out early, which leads us back to my man Christian Kirk. This is a prime Captain Kirk matchup. ESPN consensus has him at wide receiver 25. I've got him at wide receiver 18. Beam Kirk into your fantasy lineups because he's ready to boldly go where no fantasy player has gone before. Live long and prosper. All right, here we are taking your questions from the Squirrel Report hotline. Make sure you call that phone number. It is real. We want to help you set your lineup every single week. Let's get to some Week 8 questions.
Hey Daniel, quick question in a PPR league, a bit of an embarrassment of riches, if you will. So I have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Marquise Brown, Chris Olave, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison, and I have to sit 2 every week, full PPR, and I never get it right. I'm leaning towards benching Hollywood and Olave, but I do not know. Thank you so much.
First off, this is fantasy football. I got 6 awesome players, and I never pick the right ones. Welcome to playing fantasy football. Second, make a trade. How do you have so many good players? Third, if I was going to choose between the guys that you have, I'm starting both those Rams and Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers, so I'm with you. This week, I am out on Hollywood Brown and Chris Olave, but Chris Olave is getting so many targets. It's a tough one, but I'm with you. I would sit those 2. All right, next up.
Hey Daniel, longtime fan. I've just got a lineup question for you. I have been riding with Calvin Ridley all year. Jordan Addison just went off. I have both. Who do I start in Week 8? Thanks.
All right, between Calvin Ridley and Jordan Addison, for me, this week, Week 8, I'm going to go with Jordan Addison. We saw how good he looked with Kirk Cousins last week. We've seen Calvin Ridley, unfortunately, take a back seat to Christian Kirk. I'm not dumping Calvin Ridley. I'm not doing anything crazy like that. But this week, here in a vacuum, I'm going to roll with the young Vikings wide receiver in Jordan Addison over going with Calvin Ridley. Man, that's a tough one, though. That is really close. All right, next question.
I was wondering, Daniel Dopp, if you could tell me if I should make a trade for Joe Mixon, and I'm trading away Joshua Palmer for Joe Mixon. I was wondering what you guys could tell me on that. I'm in need of a running back right now. I have Tony Pollard and Jonathan Taylor, so if you can let me know, I'd appreciate it.
You had me at Joe Mixon for Josh Palmer. That's a great deal to make. Are you kidding me? I also appreciate in that voicemail, even though we cut it out, you called him Antonio Pollard. Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Focus podcast. Seriously, if you can get Joe Mixon for Josh Palmer, go out and make that deal. Running back is super thin. You've got two really good starters now. Joe Mixon would give you a great backup running back for your bench to be able to throw in case anyone gets hurt. I think that is a fantastic decision. Press accept on that trade immediately. All right, last question.
Hey, Daniel. Just wondering what to do with Bijan Robinson this week. I lost by 4.5 points and had to watch Cam Akers beat me because Bijan only had 0.3. Could you help me out? What do I do with Bijan Robinson this week? All right, thanks.
Brutal. Every single Bijan manager knows exactly how you feel, dude. Here's what I'm doing. This week, I am starting Bijan Robinson, and then I'm going to stick around for the next segment called Nut Up or Shut Up. Welcome to our new segment called Nut Up or Shut Up, where I tell you about players who either need to nut up or shut up. You know, sometimes you just got to do the simple stuff. I lay in bed at night asking myself one question over and over and over. That question is, why does Arthur Smith hate fantasy football managers? I mean, like Drake London and Kyle Pitts, they weren't enough? We already can't trust those guys in spite of their enormous talent. London is wide receiver 37. Kyle Pitts, tight end 13 behind Jonnu Smith. It sucks. Nobody hurts more than Falcons fans and fantasy managers. But now you want to pull Bijan Robinson into this? 1 carry? Are you serious? For 3 yards and 0.3 fantasy points? What kind of a joke is that? Where's the punchline? Because I feel like my fantasy team just got punched in the nuts by the Falcons more often than not. Arthur Smith, please. Bijan has finished outside the top 20 in 3 of the last 5 weeks. You cannot do this to us. Now he gets a Titans defense that has given up the 4th fewest fantasy points to running backs. I'm still ranking Bijan as a top 12 guy this week, but it's nut up or shut up time when it comes to the egregious misuse of resources in Atlanta. Remember back in the preseason when we drafted Aaron Jones as a top 12 running back? But Travis Kelce hadn't even shot his shot with Taylor Swift yet. Tupac's murderer was still on the loose. And we used to use this fun little thing called Twitter before it was burned to the ground by a spoiled toddler with nepotism. Simpler times. Well, since the draft, we've only seen Aaron Jones 3 times. First in week 1 for a sweet 24.7 fantasy point outing. But then he missed the next 3 straight games and he had a bye week. And that's 4 games where you couldn't use him. And in his other 2 games this year, he has 7.1 fantasy points combined. Aaron Jones has been unusable since week 1. Now here we are in week 8. The Vikings have allowed the 11th fewest fantasy points to running back. So I am hoping that we get more passing game work from him, because as it stands, it is time for Jones to deliver for fantasy managers, because he is on thin ice with this guy. He lands just inside my top 20 at the running back position. It's time to nut up or shut up here in week 8. Tyler Lockett had been Mr. Consistency coming into the season. As a reminder, he was wide receiver 16 or higher for 5 consecutive years, but here in 2023, he's wide receiver 40. We have not seen this kind of a fall from grace since Antonio Brown took his shirt off and quit the NFL in the middle of an actual game. And his quarterback was Tom Brady. We have not seen a fall from grace like this since we all realized the words to "Baby, It's Cold Outside" are just a little bit problematic. Kind of like when we found out that Paula Deen is just a little bit racist. I mean, who saw that one coming? I did. Lockett has been doing the opposite of cooking this year. Dude has been outside the top 40 in 4 of his 6 games. Outside the top 40 in targets. Outside the top 35 in receptions. It's the exact opposite of what we expected this year. And it's not like DK Metcalf is just out here dominating the target share. No, he's splitting time with Jackson Smith-Njigba and Jake Bobo. Bobo was a clown. Tyler Lockett is losing out fantasy value to a guy named after a clown. I mean, he had an awesome connection with Geno Smith last year, but something's different this year. With DK still dealing with injuries, it is time for Tyler Lockett to nut up or shut up as the wide receiver 1 against a tough Browns defense here in Week 8. Thanks for hanging out with us again this week. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with just one of your friends. We want to make sure that we can spread this around as much as possible, and keep sending us your voicemails. We want to answer as many as we can on the show. If we don't answer it on the show, check out Fantasy Focus on TikTok, Fridays at 12:30 p.m., right after we get done taping the show. We always answer as many of them there as possible. We love you guys. Truly, thank you for being you. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. Good luck here in Week 8. We'll see you in Week 9.
I love Jordan Addison. Yes, I do. Jordan Addison.